74, the podcast with Dan Bardell and Gregg Evans.
Hello, welcome back to 1874, the podcast. It's time for our weekly show. Myself and Gregg Evans talking all things Aston Villa. We will, of course, talk about Aston Villa 0, Arsenal 2. Plenty of positives to take away from that game. We'll talk about the off-the-pitch stuff as well around Villa Park, which, of course, isn't brilliant to talk about. And, of course, it's the last week of the transfer window, so we will talk about transfers as well. As I say, delighted to be joined by Gregg Evans. More from him in a minute, but NordVPN are back for the new season. They're sponsoring our show. So hang around and you'll be able to find out later on in the show what it is they can offer you, and all the links and all that jazz will be in the description as well. Gregg Evans of The Athletic, how are you?
That's me. Yeah, good, thanks, Dan. How are you? Any holidays booked?
No, nothing now. All quiet. All this work mode truly on now, Gregg. Last week of the transfer window, I've got plenty going on this week. It's my only day at home, so wanted to jump on and do a podcast with you. Of course, what a better way to spend my day at home than talking to you, Gregg.
Great, yeah. I mean, you day late, to be honest. We usually do it Mondays, don't we?
But
you know, so was I.
I wasn't at home. Difficulties. I mean, I'm in a different place for you.
Always find ways.
Your work is from home. Breaking transfer news. Just let's start with that. Actually, has AVFC just said that Matt Mayer, who me and you used to sing a lovely song about at Villa away games when we'd had a few beers, saying Gertruda is advancing. Is there any truth? Should we start with that?
Not sure if it's advancing or not, but there has been interest in him for quite some time. I think obviously the injury to Matty Cash. Look, let's hope Cash isn't out for too long. I think he's due to be about 4 or 5 weeks, isn't it? Something like that. If he can get back quicker, then great. But Villa are going to need some sort of cover, aren't they? At that point, whether they're going to spend £35 million on covering a player for a month or not is. Remains to be seen, but he's a player that they were interested in before. I think that area of the pitch is something that Villa have been looking to address. So we shall see. Still a few days left, and there are still plenty of other clubs interested in Gertruda. The situation with him at Feyenoord, a little bit complicated. They've obviously sold a lot of their players. He's a player who is part of the leadership group there. Very, very important to the team, so we're waiting to.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting this last few days. I do think Villa will do something. It's difficult to know whether signings depend on outgoings, because in terms of slots for the Champions League and the Premier League, Villa are pretty much there. I would say. Do you think that someone coming in will depend on outgoings? It's a bit weird. Like Diego, I thought Diego Carlos might come on at the weekend, for example, and he was a big baptism of fire, really, at Villa Park, throwing Nedlikovic in it against Arsenal. I thought, but Emery trusted him, and he did okay. Didn't do anything wrong by any stretch of the imagination. But I thought he might move Konsa across and bring Carlos. And the fact we haven't seen him in the first 2 games, especially when we know Cash only trained on Friday as well. Do you think that signals that maybe he needs to go for someone else to come in?
It's a strange one with Carlos, isn't it? Because in the Arsenal games last year, he was impressive, wasn't he? And I think he hasn't done too much wrong really in a Villa shirt. I think he's performed quite well. I think he's it would actually be quite hard, I think, for Villa to go and buy another centre half who would be better than Diego Carlos. There's always that difficulty there. We've seen him linked with a few clubs already this summer, so. Let's see again. Yeah, it's another one. There's still quite a few days left. There's still 3 days left in the transfer window. So that's a very long time, really, for things to quickly happen. I feel like him not coming on or not featuring in the last game was a bit of a sign, really, of where he's at. Yeah, and you could see Marie's face and his reaction when Cash got injured. Very, very frustrated, because not only did his game plan have to change, he had to throw a very young lad on to fill in for him, but also he's without a player already now for a couple of weeks, and that was the key problem at the back end of last season, wasn't it? Villa missing out on players when they really needed it, and just upsetting the way that they prepared for games.
Yeah, I thought they missed Cash when he went off. Like I said, I don't think Nedlikovic, I'm still probably saying his name wrong. Nedeljkovic did anything. He didn't do anything wrong, but I felt like, as you would, I felt like he probably played the game a bit safer going forward than I think Cash would have done. I think at times Villa Villa lacked something down that right hand side in that Arsenal game. I felt. In fact, Cash probably would have offered that, Greg.
Yeah, I think so. I just think, with Cash, there's no nerves or anything with it. With him playing, he knows exactly what he's going to do. He's a very wholehearted type of player. So he doesn't pull out of tackles. He doesn't shy away from the rough and tumble that's often needed, and he can get forward when he needs to. So it felt that Nedeljkovic was just a little bit apprehensive to get forward. Played a few too many sidewards or backwards passes, I felt, as well. And look, he's a teenager, isn't he? It's going to be really difficult for him to come into such a big game. Ideally, he would have played a couple of cup games, at Villa Park and in that Villa team to try and settle himself in a little bit. So, but I didn't think he did badly.
Not at all.
I thought he handled himself quite well, and very well built for a lad of that age as well. So he's set up in that respect. Looks quite young in the face, inevitably for he is. But I think it'll be good for him. The next game, if he plays, will perhaps be a little bit easier. Not only because it's a slightly less opponent, but because he would have had those minutes in the bank.
Yeah, so he's been on the pitch now with the first away game and the first home game. He's kind of got that under his belt now, hasn't he? And I think you're right about his frame and his size. He's played Champions League football at the end of the day. He's played against Manchester City, so he's got a bright future. But as you would expect in a game of that magnitude, I think we probably lacked something with Cash not being on the pitch. But Greg, overall, I walked away from the game, or waded through, walking out the ground, that feeling quite positive, really, about it. I actually thought Villa played better than they did against Arsenal at home last season. I thought we had more control. I thought the way we started the second half, so unfortunate not to score. Look, I know Ollie Watkins should score that chance, but it's a phenomenal save from Raya in real time. That's a brilliant save to get up and make that reaction stop. So, but the way Villa kind of controlled the opening of that second half, really, I felt is a big positive going into the new season. I thought we were brilliant. It was kind of, we just kept coming back, didn't get the goal, which is unfortunate. But I saw a lot of things in that game going into this new season now that made me feel really positive, Greg.
Yeah, and I was positive with Villa's performance on the opening day of the season as well. And I watched the game and came away feeling similar to you, Dan. A game where Villa ruled the missed chances, clearly. If Watkins had put one or both of those away, then it would have been a completely different game. I look back to the Man City and the Arsenal games last year. Villa were quite ruthless, weren't they? They took the chances when it mattered. And Arsenal were almost the team that sort of not dominated possession, but I felt Arsenal were better than Villa last year, but came away with nothing and would have felt aggrieved by that. Villa maybe felt this way this time. So I think a mark of where Villa are at is how close they ran Arsenal almost. Arsenal are a mightily impressive team now.
An elite team now.
They're immense. They're going to really be pushing Man City this year, if not already have the advantage. It's going to be an interesting title race, I think. But Villa, I don't think are going to be too far behind. I think, yes, they were outdone on Saturday, but that's just elite level performance from a team that has been together for quite a long time now, and a team that knows exactly what it wants from Arteta.
Yeah, even in the first half, I thought Villa played well, and I saw a lot of positive signs. My favourite moment from that first half was Villa kind of got caught on the break on the counter. I think they gave the ball away, like on the attack, and were a bit short. I think it might have been after the breakdown of a set piece actually. And Leon Bailey broke his neck to get back in and make a clearance and put himself in the right place. And I was just impressed with the application of the Villa team all around. Towards the end of the last season, we saw that they were very, very tired. They've kind of hit the refresh button this summer, obviously, and they looked a lot fresher. Arsenal had more possession. You would expect that Arsenal will get more possession in nearly every game that they play this season. But I thought a lot of their possession, Arsenal, was safe possession, and Villa's set up tactically defensively was really, really good. The high line wasn't quite as high as it was last season. Villa pressed at the right times, I felt, and when Villa had the ball, they had that element of control, and I felt like they would be dangerous and get a goal when they're on the attack. So overall, even though Villa have lost 2-0, I thought both defensively and attacking wise, I saw things that were different from last season, and I've just feel positive about it.
Yeah, and I think, you mentioned Arsenal's sort of safe play there. That was because Villa were quite tough to break down as well. But I do think the major difference in the game was the relentless pressing from Arsenal. They gave Villa no space at all. They just couldn't play out from the back in the way that they do against other teams. Yes, they allowed the space on the wide areas a little bit more, and as the game went on, that opened up slightly. But I think they just blocked off those passing lanes down the middle, and that prevented Villa really from getting forward as often as they have done in previous games. But if you listen to Arteta after the game, the way he spoke positively about Morgan Rogers, who was excellent, who we'll probably come on to at some point. John McGinn, also very, very good as well in terms of how he was carrying the ball and beating the press. It's just a sign. You don't really hear Guardiola and Arteta talking about opposition teams in that detail, and that's a level of where Villa are at now. They're a team that every team in the country are wary and scared of, because they've shown that they can beat any team on their day now.
Yeah, you touched on Rodgers there in the number 10 position. I listened to Jamie Redknapp after the game. I was driving into work yesterday. I listened to the Sky podcast and hear what Henry and Redknapp said after the game. And Redknapp kind of said, Morgan Rogers in that game was playing with world-class players and against world-class players. I liked that he said that Villa had world-class players, but by the way, but he was the standout player on the pitch. Some of what he did in that game, I realised in that game how unique he is, because he's 6 foot plus, he's strong, he dribbles really, really well, like you'd expect a stereotypical wide player to do. But the difference between them and him is his size. He's so hard to knock off the ball. He turned Declan Rice in circles at one point, which isn't easy to do. And just when you think he's taken one touch too many, or he's taken it too far, he manages to get himself into space and get bypass players. He's so exciting and just keeps getting better, Morgan Rogers. And at the moment, the back end of last season, the start of this season, I'm relatively confident that this guy will play for England by the end of the season.
Yeah, it's interesting you should say that, because when he was asked after the game about England, he kind of answered back in shock, really, in surprise. He was almost, and it was, that was just a sign of how genuine he is. He hasn't really thought about playing for England. He just wants to focus on establishing himself as a Premier League player and kicking on, because he hasn't even had a full season in the Premier League yet. So that's his first step. Lee Carsley, the interim England manager, was there watching, and he would have been impressed, because everybody who watched the game would have been impressed with him.
He'd have worked with him before as well.
He was brilliant, yeah, and he'd have known him from the pathways in the age group. So I think he's got a bright future. He's very level-headed. Yeah, surely we're going to be seeing a new contract for him at some point, even though he's only been here for a few months, because he's one of the lowest paid players at Villa, and he will be deserving of that step up, because he's performing as well, or if not better, than any of his teammates.
Yeah, he's on a relatively low. I mean, in Premier League terms now, he's on a relatively low wage in Villa's wage structure. He's on a low wage as well. So I think you're right. I think Villa have been good at rewarding people. I think already he probably deserves to be rewarded and bumped up to the same kind of level as some other players in the first team. And I'm sure Villa will act on that and do that at some point. But he almost, I don't say burst onto the scene, but I think that game, doing that against Arsenal, probably he was flying a bit under the radar before. Now I think people will be stepping up and taking notice of him who maybe hadn't watched much of him before.
Yeah, in the same way that Ramsey sort of burst onto the scene and then became noticed.
Horrible phrase that, isn't it? Burst onto the scene, but sometimes it's the only one you can use.
Yeah. And look, he had a little bit of a settling in period when he arrived in January. It took a bit of time to get used to a new club, but immediately felt at home, because this is his town. He's from this area. He knows he's got friends here still. He's comfortable in his surroundings. He feels like he's good enough to be in this Villa team now, and he's showing that. And he's just got a very unique skill set. I think it's, as you say, it's his size. Players bounce off him, and he's not actually that big, but he's just, because he's so big. Sorry, he's not actually that broad, but because he's so big, he's quite difficult to come up against. And yeah, England are blessed with very, very good attacking midfield players types like him, aren't they? You know, we rave about Jude Bellingham, and you know, he's got shades of how he plays, hasn't he? You know, because of his style and stature, and he plays in a similar way. And then Jacob Ramsey obviously has very good ball carrying ability, like him too. So I think it's exciting for Villa because they've got lots of different options that they can turn to. But it seems that Rodgers is really one of these players that Emery is keen on.
Yeah, wild comment incoming from me here. Some Agent Cooper just in the chat said that he reminds him of R9. I actually was sat there at Villa Park thinking, and I'm not saying he's as good as Cristiano Ronaldo was at this age, but he reminded me of a young Cristiano Ronaldo, because that's the type of player he was at 22. You know, quite unique, quite tall, was growing physically at that point, playing on the left wing at 22. I think he was. He reminded me a little bit of that, because that's kind of what Ronaldo was doing.
I can't see it.
No, he's the same size. They'll be the same height.
I can't see any resemblance whatsoever.
Not in the way he was carrying the ball.
I mean, Ronaldo, he was just all tricks and flicks, wasn't he?
No, but when he matured, he probably wasn't 22. He probably wasn't 22 at the time I'm talking about. When his game was refined, and he kind of wasn't doing those flicks and tricks, and he was cutting in and getting shots.
I can't
his frame, you don't see it at all.
No, I can't see the resemblance there.
Okay.
But no, and
I did say it was a bit wild when I started to go down that path. I mean, Jamie Redknapp said it reminded him of Jonah Loma.
Really?
Yeah. He said he was like Jonah. He said he was like Jonah Loma. I don't know whether that's wilder than what I've just said or not.
I think it is.
I mean, it's a different sport for a start, isn't it? So yeah, it's quite wild, isn't it? Yeah, Lee. Maybe I'm not the Ronaldo things miles off. Lee Johnson in the chat just said Ronaldo had quick feet and tricks. Rodgers has got quick feet, and yes, David Styles has just said something that I wanted to say and I've forgotten about. It's his acceleration from a standing start that gives me R9 vibes. But what he does really well, Rodgers, he does that thing that defenders hate, where he's going, he stops and slows down, and he can just go again. And defenders, honestly, if you speak to people that have played football at the highest level, that is the one thing that they absolutely hate, defenders.
Yeah, Ollie Watkins was saying that he studied clips of Salah and Mo Salah, and he said that he thought he did that the best a couple of years ago, and started to bring that into his game. I think we've noticed that loads of times, haven't we, with Watkins? You know, he stops, stutters, and then goes again. Really impressive skill to have, and difficult for defenders to stop that. So, yeah, I agree with that.
I mean, we said my statement was wild, and the Jonah Loma statement was wild. There's some absolute crazy names coming out in the chat at the moment. I've seen Zinedine Zidane. I've seen David Beckham, which I'm not sure where that's coming from. Gaza. People agreeing with the Jonah Loma, Steve McManaman. There's all kinds of names coming up here, Greg. I mean, if Rodgers is as good as got all skill sets from all these players, he's going to be the best player in the world, isn't he?
Oh yeah, crazy. Let's stick with Morgan Rodgers, and I mean that's maybe my fault for likening him to Bellingham in some ways. So
that's probably the fairest one of the line.
Let's stick to Morgan Rodgers as Morgan Rodgers, because he's a unique guy. He's very much himself. You know, he's starting to build a name for himself as well, isn't it? So let's not get caught up on these comparisons and just enjoy what he is, which at the moment is a very, very good Aston Villa player and potentially an England player.
Yeah, what did you think of Onana? Quite interesting. Probably the thing I was most interested in the game was watching him. I was impressed. I thought he stood out again. Just offers something in the central midfield zone that Villa have not had for a long time. Again, someone who's quite unique because of his size, but he can get round the pitch, break up plays. Passing, I've got to say, is a lot better than I thought it was when I was watching Everton. Nearly scored again. Obviously, a bit unlucky with that deflected effort off the bar. He looks a really, really astute pickup, doesn't he? I know he was expensive, but he looks good.
Yeah, and we expected it, didn't we? You know, for the money, we expected him to come in and hit the ground running. You know, knows the Premier League well. Has had those times in the trenches almost at Everton where he's learnt about the league and knows how to come in and really boss a midfield. I think what we're going to see perhaps when Kamara's back is Onana given a little bit more license to get forward. That kind of feels like the position he'll be given. You know, just a little bit more license. But yeah, good, you know, strong strong sort of imposing presence in the middle of the park, isn't he? We feel like Villa haven't had that for a while. Remember before Danny Drinkwater came, Villa were trying to sign Steven Nzonzi, and at the time I was thinking when they were looking at getting him, I was thinking, I can't remember Villa having a big tall midfielder like that for some time. That might really work. So Onana, I feel like he's going to be a real threat piece at set pieces. A threat at set pieces, and they were quite varied, weren't they? He was starting on the edge of the box, running into the box, and
that one he ran for the halfway line for the one set piece.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of predictable, isn't it?
You got there as well.
Surely, if you're defenders, you know what. Yeah. He got there, won the header, didn't he? But then couldn't keep it on target. So, he's going to be a big player in many respects.
Yeah, anything from the game that concerned you, or is it just all positive? I know they lost. Look, never great to lose.
Yeah, I mean, not all positive. I mean, I think for all of the praise we've given Emi Martinez on this podcast over the years, he just doesn't seem to turn up against Arsenal, does he? Makes one good save, but should not have let that second one in.
People are going to pick on that second one, but I
mean, he'd be disappointed with it, and it's like the way the Arsenal fans are reacting. They know They know that he's made a bit of a mistake there as well. And look, I love Emi Martinez. I've spoken so passionately and positively about him ever since he's come to the club, and he has massively transformed Aston Villa. But against Arsenal, he's had some bad days, especially at Villa Park.
I think it was that bad. I didn't think it was that
bad.
No,
he hasn't. No, it wasn't. He wasn't that bad. He wasn't that bad. But I just feel like he's never quite himself against Arsenal.
Maybe psychs himself up a little bit too much. Maybe means a bit too much. It's weird to say that about someone who's literally won everything at international level.
I mean,
his mentality is what's makes
who am I to judge him? But you asked me about the bad things, and that him not saving that second goal was one. There wasn't really, Watkins looked a little bit rusty still, didn't he? Feel like those chances are big. You've got to be putting those chances away.
Yeah,
that's what Villa did so well against Arsenal and Man City last year. They were clinical and ruthless. They can't get into a habit of missing those chances against the best teams in the league. Else Villa aren't going to progress from last year.
You're surprised by the rustiness a bit, because to me the Euros doesn't feel like it was that long ago. But I suppose he didn't play 90 minutes in the Euros at any point. I guess that's the problem with international tournaments. When your nation progresses, you're late back. There's a lot. I mean, Declan Rice is in the same boat, but he would have played he probably played every minute in the Euros, didn't he? Are you worried by anything? Do you think it is just rustiness with Watkins?
Well, I think with Watkins, what we've seen over his entire career is that he goes through spells of scoring, doesn't he? As soon as he gets a goal, it's he's going to score the week after, and then the week after that, and then he's going to probably go 9 goals in 10 games or something like that, because that's typically how his form is. So he's probably just waiting for that first goal. Yeah, he's missed a couple in the opening 2 games, and it does look a little bit rusty. I can't put it too much down to the England experience. Okay, he didn't play very often, and yes, probably mentally would be a little bit tired and probably still need a little bit more of a break. 3 weeks away was it? It's not quite long enough, is it, when you've had such a long taxing season as he had at Villa last year? You just need a little bit of longer of a refresh. So maybe we'll see more from him in the coming weeks.
Yeah, Scotty UK says fine margins. I've no doubt we're a top 4 team and possibly more with another few signings over the next 12 months. I still see us as a top team. I think the top 3 will be the top 3, same top 3 as last season in whatever order that there is. I think it's a big ask for Villa to catch up with that this season, especially when it's a maiden Champions League campaign as well. But after that, quite easily finish 4th, quite easily finish 6th. But we'll be right in amongst it. And I'll just watch us now and just think we're such a good team. Some of the football that we play, I've never seen football like that down Villa Park, and I thought that again on Saturday, even though we lost.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, the 2 standout games that I've seen from other teams are Arsenal and the way they got the better of Villa, and Man City and the way they got the better of Chelsea in those two games. They just show that they are going to continue to be right at the top of this Premier League all the way through, because Man City, they were excellent at blocking off Chelsea's passing lanes and just really made it hard for them to get out on the opening day of the season. Arsenal did the same for Villa. Liverpool have started well, but they're under a new manager, so not sure they're going to have as smooth as a ride as Arsenal and Man City are. And look, feel like Ryan Gravenberch has started really well in holding midfield, but I do feel like that's an area that's going to cause them problems when they come up against the best teams like Man City, Arsenal and Villa. So I'm not 100% with you on whether the top three will be definitely
interesting
given. I do think we need a little bit more time to see that. Are Chelsea going to be an exciting team that can see off the lower ranked teams and maybe just struggle a little bit against the better teams? We'll wait and see. I'd still expect Villa to be more consistent over the season than Chelsea, but out of all of the other teams, they do look like the one that, and maybe I'm getting a bit carried away because they've just scored 6 goals, but I'm just thinking what they did at the back end of last season as well. I feel like they are the team that could be the one that could threaten Villa.
I mean, they'll probably sign 5 players in the next 3 days and completely disrupt all the good that they did against Wolves at the weekend. Now, interesting you think that about Liverpool, especially given that you're working on or with them now, because I said the opposite on Sky Sports News yesterday. I'm quite impressed that Slot's come in and he hasn't said, I need this player, I need that player, I need this player. He's just looking at what he's got, evaluated what they've got, not trying to completely rip up everything that Klopp's done. I actually think not signing anyone's a good thing for Liverpool. But when I said that on telly yesterday, I was I didn't get no one likes it. It didn't go down well with the rest of the panel. Everyone was looking at me like I was absolutely crazy. But I genuinely believe that. I think that's a sign of a good manager as well. Like when Emery came into Villa and didn't rip everything up, work with the players he's got. I think if you can coach the players that are already there, I think that shows you're a very, very good manager.
Yeah, it does. And, we won't dwell too much on Liverpool, but we've Slot is a head coach now. He's the first head coach ever to be at Liverpool. So the onus is on him to improve players. And look, he's coming from a club at Feyenoord who sold their best players all the time. So to actually come in and look at a squad and know that the majority of those players, especially all the key ones that you want to keep, are going to start, that's a really good start. For Liverpool, they've got a few issues. Trent Alexander-Arnold, Mo Salah and Virgil van Dijk are all out of contracts at the end of this season. It's pretty incredible that a club of that stature has let that get to that stage. So that's an issue for them. I do feel like they're going to need a proper holding midfield as the season goes on. And we've Chelsea, as you say, until they get a proper settled side, who knows how good they are, because they've just got so many players in so many positions. I mean, like Lavia, I thought he was okay on the opening day of the season, yet he didn't even get in the squad against Wolves. And you just think, and then the Sterling situation, you just wonder whether they're not
Sancho
picking
now as well.
The better players. So
trying to throw Sancho into the mix, and when they're already bringing on Felix, Neto, and another attacking player whose name's completely Nkunku. It's struggle to keep those players happy, and that's when you have problems. That's why I like what Villa have done, multifunctional players. People can play in different positions, and I think that helps with squad harmony as well, because everyone's getting minutes at Chelsea. That I don't think that's going to happen, and I think they'll come a cropper with that at the end of the season. Great point from Mark Webb in the chat about Watkins. Watkins didn't score until his 6th league game last year and missed chances. Not worried. I think that's a fair comment, isn't it? I think
and I'm not worried either. I know he'll always score goals.
Yeah. Right then, let's talk about the off-the-pitch stuff then, Greg. Obviously, you weren't there, so you can't give an account of what happens, but you can kind of bounce off what I say and have opinions on how things are. Look, I've been critical.
And I had friends there, who weren't happy.
Yeah, look, I've been critical of stuff off the pitch for probably 12 to 18 months now, and some people at the club don't like that, but the way I see it is, yes, I do the job I do, but also I pay for a season ticket and have done since I was 7. Well, I didn't pay for it when I was 7, but you take my point. I've had a season ticket in the Horse End for 30 years. My dad has been going for even longer, so I'm entitled to an opinion on things that are off the pitch. What I saw on Saturday wasn't great. I was there the day before doing some work for the Premier League, and I walked in and saw the place was a building site and thought, how is this going to be okay for tomorrow? I was quite concerned by it. Anyway, a lot of the stuff that I saw on Friday wasn't there on Saturday, so fair play. People were obviously working through the night to rectify things that needed rectifying before the match day takes place. I got there an hour and a half before kickoff. First off, actually, the place I parked the entirety of last season, the Villa Academy car park, got there and was told, "Oh, you can't park here because
Really?
it's just for corporate people." So I was like, "Oh, okay, I've not seen that communicated anywhere." The club might have communicated it, but if they did, I haven't seen it. So that was the first blow to the day. My dad is now classed as disabled, so we've got a disabled badge. I managed to park in there because I've got the disabled badge. So,
Yeah.
but again, communication, if they haven't said that, that's not great, because a lot of people like me will have parked there the entirety of last season. Fine. I might have missed that. I accept that. Anyway, walked to the ground in an hour and a half. Well, into the I don't even know what it's called, the bit by the Trinity where there's loads of food stands. There was live music and stuff last
fan
season.
zone. Call it a fan zone, yeah.
Stage isn't there anymore. Doesn't really bother me. Doesn't really affect me. That wasn't there. But a lot of the food and drink outlets that were there last season, just gone. Not enough there to satisfy the people that go to the fan zone. Not enough options. Not enough choice. Okay, I choose to be vegetarian, but the one stand that did vegetarian foods, not there anymore, and you couldn't get a beer. So that's not a great start, in my opinion, for people that would have done that for the entirety of last season. Go up to my seats in the Holt end. Luckily for me and my dad, there was no problems in the Holt end upper. I scanned my season ticket. I got straight through. I was in the concourse miles before the game kicked off. Looking down at the people trying to get in the lower Holt, the queue already was absolutely for miles. I couldn't believe it wasn't open yet. You know, we're under an hour and a half till kickoff now, and people are struggling to get in. I've seen images of the queues as time's gone on. Didn't really look like they subsided, and I know people missed kickoff. That isn't something that directly affected me, but I know it affected a lot of people. That's not good enough. In fairness to the club, watching some people try and scan a season ticket on their phone into the ground, you would think they'd never ever done it in their life. Like, I got straight through, so I can say from my point of view, that worked fine. But there will be a lot of people that would have struggled with that, and I watched people struggle with that. That isn't the club's fault, but the ground didn't open on time, which caused a backlog right from the start. So that has caused problems. In the ground where I sit in the Holt end, I've sat there for 30 years. The concourse has not changed. The food and drink options, they've changed a little bit, but arguably they're pretty much the same as they have been for 30 years. The service isn't good. I can't dress it up. The service has never been good. Saying that, I've been to a lot of football grounds in the past and kind of felt the same thing when I was there. But what they've done in the Holt end now is incorporate the terrace view. I don't agree with that, but absolutely fine. And I don't begrudge anyone who chooses to do that option, because it got them a season ticket at their football club, and that's what they will want. Never would have a go at anyone for doing that. But in building that, they got rid of the biggest toilet that was in the Holt end upper. They replaced it with a toilet that has 6 urinals. That isn't enough. So every time you need the toilet at peak times, at half time, after the game, before the game, there's going to be overflow. There's going to be a queue. There's not enough toilets. They've done that to look after corporate hospitality. I don't agree. I don't agree with that. That's just how I feel about that. Chris Heck has made a lot of noise about, we're doing this, we're doing that. We're going to look after the general admission fans. From what I can say, they haven't done anything. That hasn't been done. That's a false promise. They've spent a lot of time upgrading corporate facilities over the summer. I know people that sit in corporate who were very, very happy with what they were offered on Saturday. I get Villa are trying to accelerate that side of things. They're trying to make Villa up there with the elite teams in the country for offering corporate offerings. It shouldn't come at the expense of general admission fans. There's stories of people turning up to their seat, but they've been moved from season ticket seats. They turn up at their seat. The seat doesn't exist. Not good enough. You can't do that. That just isn't acceptable at any level of football, let alone when people are paying through the nose. Sorry, but for season tickets, I completely disagree with some of the stuff they've done with regards moving people, and the communication around that was shocking from what I've heard. So this is just this is tails off the back end of that stuff. Season ticket rollout from the club has not been good. I would class it as being a disaster. That's my personal feelings on it. Again, I've not been affected by this. I haven't been moved. Me paying for my season ticket and getting into my seat, no problems at all. But some of the horror stories that you've heard just simply aren't good enough, and the club have messed up. I can't dress it up any other way. But before kick-off, the toilet started to flood. By the end of the game, the Holt end toilets, I didn't even want to set foot in there. I could see it was going to be flooded. I peered my head around the corner. I've seen videos of it on social media since, that I'm sure you've seen as well, Greg. I've heard that there was floods in other areas of the ground as well. Hygiene, unacceptable. it's just unacceptable all round that the toilets have flooded in the whole end. I'm sure it happened for a game last season as well, and it was rectified and didn't happen again. But these are things that shouldn't be happening, and they certainly shouldn't be happening when the club when you're paying through the nose for a season ticket. And Villa fans are paying London prices for season tickets now. We're not in London. It's not on. So the club have done a lot over the summer in terms, and they're trying to do a lot with stuff around the ground. But it feels to me increasingly that it's coming at the expense of general admission and season ticket holders. Chris Heck can come on videos and talk about what they've done and new tunnel, blah, 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 things like that. You've got to get the basics right. And this is where Villa fall down time after time. It's not a new thing. It's been going on for a long, long time. So I'm not fully blaming Chris Heck. Things around the ground have been a problem for a long, long time now. But you've got to accept the criticism that comes your way. I didn't think the statement was great today. I've been told that big businesses will never apologise for things because it accepts liability and accepts responsibility. I didn't feel particularly heartfelt, the apology, and the people have had to put up with a lot for that first game of the season. And probably the worst thing of all is people that have paid for tickets and season tickets have missed a portion of the game because of how Villa Park was on that day. So overall, Greg, just not a brilliant look, is there?
No, and look, I have lots of friends who go to the game, and some of them shared similar experiences with you because they sit in the Holt End. They experience the urine on the toilet, in the toilet seat, on the toilet floor, which it's pretty disgusting, isn't it?
That's horrible, mate.
It's not what you want if you're taking like your son or your little daughter or whatever to a game, and you're seeing that. It's not great, but that's just one of the problems. I mean, clearly Villa are desperately trying to improve Villa Park in general. They're trying to get more money from Villa Park, which is why they are improving the hospitality areas. But if they're missing out on the basics, then it's going to severely frustrate fans who have been going for a long time, paying their hard-earned money for lots of years. And it's going to get them a lot of negative press around it because these issues will not go away if thousands of supporters are seeing them. Look, it's down to Villa now. They issued the statement. It's down to them to get it right for the Everton game. Everton next, is that right? And then Wolves. So
they've got a bit of time.
So, they've got 16 days, I think, 16, 17 days. Is that right? Until the Everton game. Is it the 14th?
I've got a feeling there's an international break, isn't there?
Sorry, yeah. The 8th is the international break, isn't it? And then I'm sure it was the 16th, is it? Okay. So look, they've got a little bit over
mid-September, let's say.
They've got over 2 weeks to fix it. Now, all of those problems are not going to get fixed in 2 weeks. It's impossible. I'd decide. They have to work day and night to get things right, but get the basics right. They're not going to change. They're not going to be able to motivate an entire workforce, for example, to provide exceptional customer service in 2 weeks. That's something that will have to be worked on, in time. But the basics have got to be right. The piss has got to be cleared up from the toilet for starters, hasn't it? Look, that's not right. But I got a little bit of sympathy with them for the ticketing issues. Other clubs have suffered the same, haven't they?
Yeah,
when they've installed the digital side of things. Villa want to become a modernised club. They want to be, environmentally friendly. I think that was one of the reasons why they moved towards that as well. To reduce ticket touting as well. That's an issue that's growing into games now because, especially with Villa, when tickets are becoming more and more important and desirable. So, look, that's going to take some time. Hopefully, the next game they get it right because that was almost like a trial run. Yes, very, very disappointing for supporters who got into the game late or had to queue up for a long time. Don't really know what to say about the people that didn't have a seat but have paid for a season ticket. I mean, it's actually quite hard to believe that actually happened. And all I can say, is that hopefully the club recognise that this is just unacceptable, as you say. And try and reward them in some way, because if they've missed an entire game or if they've been thrown around to various different positions across the stand or stadium, that doesn't sound like a good match day experience to me.
Yeah, look, as I've said, I haven't experienced some of those things that I've just mentioned, but I will give my opinion and try and fight the corner a Villa fan. Certain people at the club don't like that, but I will always do it, and I'm entitled to do it. So I think what we've seen on social media, just all round, not good enough at all. It's just like little things like you go to have a beer. It's like 2 options of beer to have in the whole 10 now. They've got rid of like half the option. My beer was vile as well. But by the way, I don't know what was going on with the pump that I had a beer from. It just wasn't nice at all. It's just absolutely horrible. And, it's compounded when you're walking out the ground and feeling like you're in Glastonbury, just the way you're having to wade through all kinds of bodily substances to get out the game. It's not good enough. And it is for kids as well. It's completely unacceptable.
I mean, look, you've summed it up pretty much how you've experienced it. It sounded like a very disappointing day on the pitch. Not the performance Villa wanted, not the result certainly, but off it, not a very enjoyable match day experience. It's on the club now to fix it. They know the problems. They've heard, they've read, they've listened to all the problems. If they don't fix it now, or if they don't try and fix it, then there are going to be further issues. But they know the issues. They've got to fix it. It's as simple as that.
That must be health and safety. Must be.
I mean, look, I don't know. No, this isn't my area of expertise.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Asking you like you're a health and safety. Come on, Greg. Have you not done your research on health and safety as a part of policy?
I don't know. I mean, look, I take I can hear in your voice how frustrated you were from the experience, which is totally understandable. I have friends who went who weren't pleased. Villa know the situation now. If they don't fix it, then it's on them. But they need a little bit of time, obviously, to get it right.
Yeah, and look, I'm not knocking people that do corporate, by the way, when I'm saying Villa have focused a lot of their energy on corporate. I'm not knocking people like that at all. I was offered the chance to go into corporate on Saturday, but I turned it down. But at some point, I know I'll get offered corporate and I'll go through the season. I just didn't want to do it for the first game of the season, and it was short notice, so I didn't want to leave my dad. But I'm not knocking the people that have taken advantage of some of the things that Villa have offered, because if it's your only way of getting into the ground and jumping season ticket queues and things like that, of course, I would be trying to do the same if it was me. But I just still feel, I think people have woken up to it after Saturday, but generally I still think the club off the pitch have been getting away with a lot of things because of how good Villa have been on the pitch. But that simply won't last, and they can't have what happened at the weekend happen again. It's just completely not good enough. But we've probably spoken enough about it now, Greg. And I'm not saying the club have done no good off the pitch either. By the way, they've done plenty of good off the pitch in the last 12 months as well. But I still think there's an awful lot wrong, and I will continue to bang that drum. Right. Anything else before we go, Greg? I think probably we've covered everything now.
No, I don't think so. I think we've touched on everything, haven't we? I think Villa shouldn't get too downhearted by the result last week, and I think try and bounce back next week. But if they don't, then I still think it's going to be a positive season. Yeah.
One last thing from you. Prediction: how many players will Villa sign before Friday or the end of Friday, and how many will they sell?
Yeah, not sure on sell, but I think what we've seen over the Nassif Sawiris and Wes Eden's era is that they're always willing to give it a go, aren't they, late on if they need to. So I think they will be opportunistic, which is a word that is regularly used across football clubs now. If something comes up, then I think they'll go for it. I think they'll get one more player in.
Yeah, I would go with one as well. An intelligent guess based on intel and things that I've heard. I would go with one. The reason I say that is I think I was on a defender, but if the right attacker was to come available, I think they would back Emery and buy an attacker. But what we've seen with Emery before is if that right player isn't there, or a player that he really wants, he will go with what he's got. And I've just got a feeling that might be what ends up happening at the end of this window. There won't be the right attacker. We know who Emery wanted. There won't be the right attacker, and we just won't do anything, which I'm fine with. I actually really like that. Fits in with what I was saying about Arne Slot earlier. I actually think that's just a sign of a brilliant manager and a brilliant coach. Right, Greg, thank you ever so much for joining me. Before we go, let's hear a little bit from NordVPN. Is proudly sponsored by NordVPN, so when and you can't watch it, we want to help you. NordVPN is a secure and private service which works on pretty much any device, including your laptop, mobile, television. So if you want to watch some live content, it allows you to appear like you're in another country. And whilst you're connected, no one else can find out what you're doing, including your internet service provider. Beyond this, the service also has threat protection baked in to protect you from intrusive website ads and malware, which is pretty handy for you. As part of NordVPN support 4 months for free, this also includes Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. All you've got to do is go to 1874.io/NordVPN and sign up. All the details are also in the description. As always, we're very grateful to anyone that signs up. We know that money is tight, but if you think NordVPN will help you out, it will also help keep the channel running and help us too. No prizes for guessing there that I completely forgot to run the NordVPN advert earlier on in the podcast, but luckily I remembered before we went, as we are live on YouTube at the moment. Right, thank you again, Greg, because as I was thanking you, I remembered that I hadn't done the NordVPN sponsorship video. So yeah, very, very professional from me. As always, Greg and myself will be back next week, of course, as we always are at the start of the week, to look back at Leicester against Aston Villa. Dave Reed and myself will be doing a preview later on in the week ahead of that Leicester game, and I'm going to jump on and do a transfer video in the middle of the week as well from my hotel room in London. Take my microphone with me because I'm sure that something's going to happen and there's going to be something to talk about. I can see you're itching to have a dig at me, Greg. So let's go. What is it? I could sense there was something you wanted to say, a joke you wanted to crack.
Oh no, I was just going to say bye.
Okay, I was giving you the gap in case you wanted to have a go at me. Do all the things that help the channel. Give the video a like, comment, subscribe with your post notifications on at YouTube, and please, if you're listening via Spotify or Apple, just leave us a lovely review, leave some nice comments, and that will really, really help us appear in places on audio feeds that we wouldn't normally appear. Thanks to NordVPN, and thank you very much to Lee for producing as well. Have a great rest of your day, and as always, up the Villa.